approach.
Right.
Ready, Bill? I am ready.
Just needed one a little stronger.
Let's control this group. All right, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Morning, everyone. Welcome to Shawnee County Board of Commissioners work session. It is April 3rd, 2023. On my right is Commissioner Kevin Cook, who represents District 2, and on my left is Commissioner Aaron Mays, who represents District 3. I'm Bill Rippon, and I represent District 1, and today we have Jim Crowell, and he is going to be discussing alternative project delivery systems. So take it away, Jim.
Thank you for that introduction. Good morning, Commissioners. Jim Crowell, Shawnee County Councilor. I'm going to discuss this topic. It is a dry topic. I'm going to try to, I'm going to say that out front. It's a dry topic, but we've got a lot of projects going on, and we have some departments that aren't normally doing projects. And when I say not normally, of course, Public Works handles projects all the time, and typically they're using the traditional method that we're accustomed to in building roads and building bridges and maintaining same. But there are a couple of delivery methods that we have been using that are becoming more popular that we want to talk about this morning, because there are some specific Kansas statutory requirements that we have to follow. It's not my office or another office trying to throw up roadblocks to using those. It is to use the process that's in place that's required so that an unsuccessful bidder on a project cannot come back and challenge the selection we've made in proceeding on a project. So let's begin. So what is a project delivery method? It is the process by which a road, a bridge, a building is constructed or renovated. And it wouldn't be a good discussion with a lawyer without a disclaimer. So here's my disclaimer. This discussion today involves county projects and state requirements only, and not any requirements that would affect private parties or other political subdivisions of the state. Not saying there aren't requirements that are similar for cities and other political subdivisions especially, but I want to focus specifically on what our departments are required to do under our internal rules and under the state's rules when it comes to delivering a project from start to finish. So there are three general methods that you will recognize when we talk about project delivery methods. The traditional one is design, bid, build. One of the newer, more commonly used methods is design, build, and the third generally recognized method is construction manager at risk. We have used all three at the county. Obviously, we've used the traditional method the most. We're seeing more design build projects. That is a trend that is occurring nationally. It's not just Shawnee County, it is a national trend, and so really is the construction manager at risk method. Let's first introduce basically what is the traditional approach. And the traditional approach is design, bid, build. So what you do is you hire an architect who might also hire engineers, or you might from the outset decide you need engineers to design the project. There will be a bid process to acquire these professional services and a contract with the design company or firm to design the project. Then you will bid the project. For Shawnee County, we're going to use the purchasing division to submit the form of the bid through the bid portal. Through this county process, the best bidder will be awarded the bid. The county will enter into a contract with the successful bidder to build the project. Notice I said best builder, not lowest bidder. We want the lowest, most responsive bid available, not just to give us wiggle room, but to choose the best value for the taxpayers of Shawnee County, which is not necessarily the lowest bid, as our experience tells us. And then, under the traditional method, once we've designed it, once we've bid it, we're going to build the project according to the price that's bid for building the project. And I'm going to go into more detail of these here in a minute, but I want to first kind of give an overview of each method. So design build. The design build process is considered an alternative delivery method. Instead of the county hiring architects and engineers, the county hires a general contractor who will then hire the architects, engineers, et cetera, whatever is needed for design work on the project. The county works with the contractor to arrive at a GMP or guaranteed maximum price for the project. The big difference between the traditional method and the design build method is who is hiring these people. So in the traditional method, we hire the designer who designs it. We then enter into a separate contract with the contractor to build it. In design build, we're doing one contract with the contractor, the general contractor, who is then going to hire the designers to work on the design for the project. This has a significant difference legally because we do not have a contract with the designers where we would before. And this process, as I said earlier, is growing in popularity. Yes, sir.
Jim, I have a question. Say you have a number of contractors that want to bid on a project. Is it uncommon or is it allowable for several different contractors to approach the same architect?
Typically, what you see, they can absolutely approach the same architect. Typically, during the design build process, though, there is going to be a formal contract already entered into with an architectural firm, engineers, to work with that contractor. So as part of the design build bid process, you're going to see through the qualifications, here I am as a contractor, these are the projects that I've worked on, and here's the design firm that I'm planning on working with, partnering with on this contract, if we are awarded the contract, to design the project for you. So you're going to know ahead of time who the contractor is, who the designers are, if you select that through the design build selection process.
But you could have more than one contractor approaching the same architect.
You could,
possibly.
but ultimately, when you get far
Right.
enough into the process, the contractor is going to identify who the design firm is.
Okay. Yes,
I hope that answers.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
Yes.
but when we do the design bid or the first process, our traditional,
Yes.
the county controls who the designer is, the county controls the architect, the engineer, the whole steps. They're the ones picking the best person for each phase. When we go to a design build, we're picking a team. And you may say, well, I like 1 and 2, but not 3 and 4 of this team, but I like 1 and 4 of the other team, but not 2 and 3. You're somewhat limited in who's on the team, aren't you?
Right. I mean, you have, and like I said, I will go into each method, the selection process we use for each method, but you are exactly correct. We are limited more on design build when it comes to who the contractor is going to be working with. And sometimes the designer matters, sometimes who is the contractor matters more. You just have to look at each individual project, where you're at in the project, what your budget is for the project. There's so many factors that go into it in deciding which is going to be that best team under design build. But you do lose flexibility in picking that piece of the project. But the legal advantage is this. In the traditional method, it is not uncommon if there is a problem during the project for the contractor to point the finger at the designer, or the designer to point the finger at the contractor. Under the traditional method, and one reason people are moving to design build, it's a defense against the owner for the contractor to say the design is bad under the traditional method. It is not a defense to say the design was bad or the designers missed something under design build, because it's the contractor who hired them, not the owner, in this case, the county. Does that make sense?
So in essence, what you're doing is just shifting the lawsuit from the county to the general contractor.
You're changing the field of liability, and you're changing the way defenses can be created and pursued in litigation. And frankly, when an attorney reviews a process, one thing we're always thinking about is what happens if this goes to litigation.
Right.
And because that's ultimately the issue we're concerned about. What happens if there's a problem in the project that we cannot get past, and there's going to be litigation? I can tell you, under the traditional method, typically everybody sues everybody. That's the way it works. The contractor blames the designer, the designer blames the contractor, there's subs involved, the owner may get blamed for something that the designer did, or maybe a decision that the owner made regarding scope or something like that during the project. So it does shift the liability focus under design build to the contractor design team, rather than putting everything on the owner and the designer through the traditional method. One of the downsides is it is somewhat of a con that the designer is working for the contractor instead of the owner. The owner loses a little bit of control that way over the design. But the idea is, if the designer is working with the contractor, they're working through the design to come at the most cost-effective way to deliver the project available. At least that's the goal, is to find the most cost-effective way to build that desk, to finish this wall, to procure windows, all the things that you do in a project. Okay? Construction manager at risk. It's really a hybrid of both methods, the traditional and the design build method. The county hires a professional to design the project and hires a construction manager at risk. You might hire the designer a little bit before you hire the construction manager, but the idea is you're going to go through a bidding process, and the designers are going to work with the construction manager at risk during the design phase of the project to, again, come up with the most efficient way of delivering the project. The construction manager constructs the project, and I want to point out this method is also growing in popularity for use. To give you an examples, and the disclaimer on this is I'm not bringing forward projects with problems. I'm bringing forward projects that I've worked on before. Shawnee North Aquatic Center was a traditional method project. East Topeka Learning Center was a traditional method project. The renovation of the Stormontville Event Center and its related facilities was a construction manager at risk project. The renovation of this building, the renovation of the courthouse are design build projects. Those are examples of all three different methods that we've used in the past. So let's go into a little more detail about a few things. The county's bidding requirements can be found in Shawnee County Home Rule Resolution 2021-2, which is the purchasing policy that we use all the time for purchasing anything. It also will control some of the issues that are involved with creating and delivering projects for Shawnee County. I bring this up just in the way when I talk about the Shawnee County Human Resources Policy Manual. If you have a human resources or personnel issue, if you're purchasing, please review the purchasing policy before you contact audit, finance, or my office about the process, a lot of the answers are going to be in that policy as to how to proceed in a certain situation. County purchasing policy will require the approval of the Board of County Commissioners to issue bids on all projects in excess of $25,000. State law also requires public bidding, and I'll quote, "For all contracts for the expenditure of county monies for the construction of any courthouse, jail, or other county building, or the construction of any bridge, highway, road, dam, turnpike, or related structures in excess of $25,000. So it's similar on both, and that's KSA 19-214. And all of the county statutes related to counties and county government are found in Chapter 19. All right, so let's go take a little bit deeper dive into the traditional method and the bidding requirements. So first thing you're going to do when you use the traditional method is you're going to prepare the RFQ, request for qualifications for design services. And you hear different department heads, different county staff come forward during meetings and use the term RFQ, RFP, somewhat interchangeably, and RFQ can mean request for quotation, request for qualifications, request for proposals. I've heard someone use the term RFP for request for pricing. Regardless, it's a cue that we're going through the bid process. Typically, when we look for pricing, we're talking about RFPs. When we're looking for qualifications, we're talking about an RFQ process, but you have to look at specifically what's being requested to know exactly what's being done in that case. Again, if you're not accustomed with the process for bidding, please seek review by the counselor's office and/or audit finance for the creation of the bidding documents. We work with the audit finance office to create RFPs, RFQs regularly. So if you're not a department that regularly issues those types of things, you are welcome to contact my office and say, hey, I need to do X, Y, Z. How do we do that? We're going to look at a prior process that we've used, something similar, and mold that into what we need for that particular case. Next, once you've got the RFP, RFQ created, you're going to seek approval of its issuance from the Board of County Commissioners. You're going to go to a public meeting and seek authorization for that. In this case, we're talking about the traditional method for project delivery specifically, so we're going to request that the Board of County Commissioners issue an RFQ for design services for a project, and you're going to describe what that project is. You're going to issue the RFQ. The responses will be reviewed by the Professional Services Selection Committee per county purchasing policy. That's an internal process that we use to determine who to select and who to recommend for, again, the Board of County Commissioners to contract with during the design process. The department issuing the request will seek approval from the Board of County Commissioners of the award to the specific design firm. The design firm will work with the county to design the project. This might include architects and engineers, depending on the project. Again, you might have a building that might have a potential structural issue, so the architects will bring in structural engineers to take a look at that specific issue, or to design an HVAC system, or whatever the project is. You're probably going to need specialties for different pieces of that, and your design team should be putting together a team to address each issue. Once the design is complete, the department will seek approval from the Board of County Commissioners to issue the bid to construct the project. Again, if not accustomed to the process, please seek help through my office or talk to audit finance. Issue the bid. The bidding documents should state the selection criteria and the process for selecting the successful bidder. Sometimes the document, the RFP document, will explain that the Professional Service Selection Committee will will do the selection process. Sometimes it'll be an internal departmental committee. Sometimes it'll be a committee made of department heads. All of those will result in a recommendation that will be made to the Board of County Commissioners as to who to select. The Board of County Commissioners is free to deviate from that selection, but we should stand ready as the selection committee to explain the reasons why a particular design firm, contractor, whichever is the case, is being selected and recommended to the Board of County Commissioners in that situation. Okay, so that, let's see. Once a successful bidder is identified, a contract with the successful bidder contractor is negotiated. So we've designed the project, we've put it out for bid, we've decided which contractor we will use. Often the department leading the project will seek the approval of the bid award and the contract documents by the Board of County Commissioners at the same time. We don't have a rule saying you have to wait. Sometimes the award and the approval of the contract for constructing the project will be done in 2 steps instead of 1. It's a matter of your timing, how quickly you need to do it, if you're ready to go. Again, we don't have a specific process with Shawnee County that says that that step needs to be done in 1 step, but it can be. Another thing that departments need to watch out for is Kansas law also requires that public works bonds be obtained for all projects exceeding $100,000. And a public works bond is broken down into a payment bond and a performance bond. The payment bond ensures that the contractor will pay all subcontractors on the project, and the performance bond requires a company to step in and hire a replacement contractor if the contractor breaches the contract, cannot perform the contract for whatever reason. The reason why we use bonds on public works projects rather than what we do in the private market is there are no mechanics liens that can be filed on public works projects by law. So the bonds are required when they reach a certain size. This statute was first adopted in the early 1900s and had a threshold of $1,000, which has been increased over the years to $100,000, as makes sense. Probably won't be long the way inflation rates are going and the rates of construction cost increases. It might increase from $100,000, but it's been that way for a while. Final step is we will build the project, and I hope it's just that easy, but we'll build the project. Any questions about the traditional method? You've seen it come across the Board of County Commissioners' agenda quite often.
In the steps that come before the Board of County Commissioners, which process, the traditional or the alternative method, would take more steps?
It depends on the project. It really does. And we'll talk about the steps in the other two, and you can decide for yourself. Under the traditional method, we have more leeway in how many steps we want to have to do the traditional bid-build process. Under the other two, design, build, and construction manager at risk, you're going to see that there are specific statutory steps for selecting those firms that we have to follow. I can say typically, I think design, build, and construction manager at risk probably takes a little longer than the traditional method. However, typically we're using those processes on larger projects, more complicated projects, and that's probably one of the criteria that you're going to look at and consider when you're deciding whether to use one of these alternative methods rather than the traditional. It's going to be a bigger project. It's going to be more complicated. Timing is important. Phasing is important. Whether you're renovating a building that is occupied already or not is important. There's a lot of factors that go into how we do that, and I'll show you here shortly.
I just know that there's a lot of departments that really, they view their projects as being time-sensitive, and anything that delays a project is seen as a frustration to them. And then also, if there's a lot of technical rules that they have to follow, and if they don't follow every rule to the technical T, then they've got to start over or delay the project. And so and again, I appreciate us being here today so that we can make sure that we follow all the rules, and so we don't have any delays.
We're required by law to bid certain projects.
And we're required by law to follow the law.
Huh?
I think we're required by law to follow the law.
Yes, we are. And we don't make those up in our office. We don't do it to slow down projects. We do it so that when we arrive at a bidder and we enter into a contract with a bidder to do the work, we know that we're comfortable that it will stand litigation if that happens from an unsuccessful bidder, because that is something that happens from time to time. An unsuccessful bidder will be upset and challenge the process that is used.
And I think it's just important that we know, our department heads know, that if they're going to go with the design build, that they know, or a contractor at risk, or a general manager at risk, that they know that it's going to take a little bit longer.
Absolutely.
And they have that built into their timelines.
Probably will, and let me explain why. So let's talk about the bidding requirements for design, build, and construction manager at risk. I'm going to talk about them generally that apply to both, and then we'll do a deeper dive into each one.
Jim, could I go
Yes.
back to performance bonds just a second before you move
Yes.
on? If you have a contractor that defaults on you for whatever reason.
Yes.
Do you then just terminate his contract and you create a whole new contract with another contractor? Or
That could be a possibility. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go to the bond company, and you need to specifically read the steps that are required in the bond, because if you do not follow each step exactly as the bond company has spelled it out in its bond, then they will use that as a defense against making a claim against the bond. So it's very important that we follow those steps. One of the options, and it usually gives the bond company the option to decide, are they going to fund the current contractor? Are they going to continue to fund it and allow the current contractor to finish the project, but they're going to be the financial backing behind it? Are they going to fire that contractor and hire a new contractor to finish the project? A lot of the decision-making when the bond company steps into the shoes of the contractor because there's been a default declared of some point, it's in the hands of the bond company. Of course, as owner, we have a say-so too, but we are required to strictly follow those requirements of the bond. And the requirements of the bond are set out by statute, and they cannot deviate from that, if that helps.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the process for using design, build, or construction manager at risk as a delivery method is specifically controlled by state law. It's an act that was adopted in 2008, so it's a relatively recent act comparatively, and it's something that was adopted because more and more entities, public entities, are using it. Private entities are using it more and more too, but the state felt that some rules were necessary to put in place to make sure that the process for selecting a design builder or construction manager at risk would be fair. And so we have an act, the Alternative Project Delivery Building Construction Procurement Act, that governs specifically the process that we need to follow. So if we stop someone in the process of doing either a design build or a construction manager at risk project, it's probably because we've seen a step passed over. And again, we do not want an unsuccessful bidder. We want you to work with, as a department, the company that you choose. We want you to make that decision. We don't want to be facing litigation or a challenge from an unsuccessful bidder. So the act authorizes the use of alternative methods on all projects, but shall not include highways, roads, bridges, dams, or related structures, or standalone parking lots. So a parking lot associated with a building, you can use design build on. a standalone parking lot, per statute, you cannot use design, build, or construction manager at risk to procure. So you're familiar with this. The process commences by publishing a notice in the official county newspaper that the Board of County Commissioners will hold a public hearing at least 15 days in advance of that. The notification should be published to consider whether to use an alternative project delivery method to construct/renovate a specified project. Here's another trap: official county newspaper. Sometimes the statute will say, use the official county newspaper. You need to contact the clerk and find out who that is for that year. Find out what the rules and the deadlines are for making a publication in that newspaper. Sometimes the statute will refer to a newspaper of general circulation in the county in which the issue arises. That can be any newspaper of general circulation. So you have to look at the statute to make sure that you're doing it the right way. Here, through this process, you're required to use the official county newspaper. During the public hearing, the Board of County Commissioners will decide whether the use of an alternative project delivery method is appropriate for the project based upon the following factors. So when we have the public hearing to authorize the issuance of an RFP for a design, build, or a construction manager at risk project, you weigh one of the following 5 factors. Number 1, the likelihood that the alternative project delivery method or procurement selected will serve the public interest by providing substantial savings of time or money over the traditional design, bid, build, delivery process. Number 2, the ability to overlap design and construction phases is required to meet the needs of the end user. Number 3, the use of an accelerated schedule is required to make repairs resulting from an emergency situation. Number 4, the project presents significant phasing or technical complexities or both, requiring the use of an integrated team of designers and constructors to solve project challenges during the design or pre-construction phase. That's probably one of the bigger factors and one of the reasons why we choose one of these design. It's not just speed once the team is selected, but it's the complexity of the project. Again, the complexity due to the type and nature of the facility, due to whether that facility is going to be occupied or not. Things like that are going to bear on the complexity of the project from a contractor point of view and an owner point of view. Finally, number 5 is the use of an alternative project delivery method will not encourage favoritism in awarding the public contract or substantially diminish competition for the public contract. As you will see, the process is not like the traditional process where typically the lowest bidder is going to win. If you don't use the lowest bidder, you're going to explain quite a bit why you're not using the lowest bidder, why someone else is the most responsive bidder. Here, cost, as you will see through the process, really doesn't enter into the equation until very late in the process. And that's the big difference, and that's why factor 5 is thrown in for your consideration. So let's go first to construction manager at risk. The Board of County Commissioners must initiate the process through the issuance of an RFQ that is published in the official county newspaper. So you've already had your public hearing, you've already considered the factors, and you've determined during that public hearing that an alternative delivery method is the appropriate way to proceed on this particular project. So you're going to issue the RFQ. The Board of County Commissioners may hire the design professionals to assist in the selection process. You might already have in place, and that's why we call it a hybrid, a design team, and it's also called a hybrid because it is similar to the traditional approach in that you will have a contract separately with the design team as the owner, as you will with the contractor. So they may assist in the selection process. The Board of County Commissioners follows a 3-phase process for selection of the winning bidder, and this is a process that is overseen by the Board of County Commissioners. Phase 1 requires the issuance of a request for qualifications so that 3 to 5 contractors can be shortlisted. You're not going to go through the process with 10, 20 contractors. You're going to find the best 3 to 5 contractors, and you're allowed to do so on construction manager at risk to move on through the process. Phase 2 requires that the Board of County Commissioners to issue a more detailed request for proposal to the shortlisted bidders. And I can go into more detail and put you to sleep, but the statute that I'm referring to, which is 19216E, gives you a long list of all the different factors for each phase that can be considered as you move through the phases. Phase 3 involves a detailed process.
Jim?
Yes.
I'm stop just for a minute, just to make sure that I'm following.
Yes.
So, county department head comes up with a plan that they want to do a project.
Yes.
And the project's going to be more than $100,000.
Yes.
And they want to do the design build methodology.
Okay.
And they go out and they do their contracting and RFQ.
Okay.
They come back with 3 people. They're going to do the same process again for the second time?
They're going to go and they're going to do a more detailed request. So let me tell you, for example, since we're talking about the statute. Let's see.
I mean, and I only ask because it seems like you're doing the same thing twice.
Let me explain. So phase 1, in a design build contract, and I'm going to quote directly from KSA 19216F, and that's not a subsection F, that's just F on the end of the statute. Phase 1 is going to require the board shall review the submittals of the interested firms and assign points to each proposal as prescribed in the instructions of the request for proposal. Notice of request for qualification shall be advertised and published in the official county newspaper. The notice shall include description of the project and the procedures for submittal. The board shall establish in the request for qualifications a time, place, and other specific instructions for the receipt of qualifications. Qualifications not submitted in strict accordance with such instructions shall be subject to rejection. A request for qualification shall be prepared for each building design build contract containing at minimum, the procedures to be followed for each of the 3 phases, the process for submitting proposals, the criteria for evaluation of proposals, and the relative weight and the procedure for making awards. So basically, phase 1, as the statute describes it in both construction manager at risk and design build, is the RFQ process. It's basically submitting the RFQ, identifying the process that a contractor must go through to make the submission, the evaluation criteria, how it's going to be evaluated. This is the fairness portion of the contract, to make sure that everyone has an even playing field when they're submitting proposals to the board for consideration. So your question is, does this duplicate phase 2? Phase 1 still requires demonstrated ability to perform projects comparable in design, scope, and complexity, references of owners for whom the building design build projects have been performed, qualifications of personnel who will manage the design and construction aspects of the project, the names and qualifications of the primary design consultants and contractors with whom the building design builder proposes to subcontract. The building design builder may not replace an identified subcontractor or subconsultant without the written approval of the board. Phase 2 is after the short list. Phase 2 of the process shall be conducted as follows. The remaining project requirements will be provided to the pre-qualified firms to include the following: The terms and conditions for the building design contract. Do we have any required terms and conditions that you have to agree now to submit to? The design criteria package, a description of the drawings, specifications, or other information to be submitted with the proposal with guidance as to the form and level of completeness of the drawings, specifications, or other information that will be acceptable, a schedule for planned commencement and completion of the building design build contract, budget limits for the building design build contract, if any, requirements including any available ratings for performance bonds, payment bonds, and insurance on the project, any other information that the board at its discretion chooses to supply, including without limitation surveys, soil reports, drawing of existing structures, environmental studies, photographs in reference to public records. I did not put this in my presentation because, as you can see, we're getting really into the weeds on this. But each phase, to answer your question, is more specific about the project and about what is going to be required.
Okay. So not to be facetious, but phase one would be to say, we want to build a house.
Right.
Phase two is, I want 4 walls, a roof, 3 windows, 2 trees. I want to have these amenities in my house.
And if timing, for example, is important to you in the contract, I need to have it built by X date, the contractor needs to know that. So when the contractor is making its final cost estimate for the GMP, or the guaranteed maximum price for the project, they know not only do I have to build that house, but I have to build that house by November.
Now, is there any way, and again, I'm just asking, is there any way that I can have a department submit a very detailed RFQ with all of their specifics on it? You get 3 bidders, you are able to condense phase 1 and phase 2 into one phase.
You cannot. You can condense phase 2 and phase 3 in design build, and the statute says that, but you cannot consider cost at all in phase 2. You have to score them based upon the information provided in phase 2, and then in phase 3, you get to consider cost as the final factor.
Darn.
Okay? The point out of all of this in our discussion this morning is that it is a detailed, specific statutory process that we want to follow, unless we just want to wing it and be at the mercy of unsuccessful bidders who do not get the project. And each time, we are at that mercy if we do not follow these steps. The successful bidder, so phase 3, you can get into pricing. You do have a presentation to the Board of County Commissioners in executive session from usually 3 proposals about the project, and then the successful bidder will negotiate contract documents with a guaranteed maximum price, what we call the GMP. If you're looking for the specific requirements like I just discussed in design build, go to 19216E. Those are it'll spell out each phase, what can be asked for in each phase, what the process is for each phase. And then the bidding requirements for design build are, again, publish your notice, have the public hearing, have the Board of County Commissioners determine that an alternative method is appropriate for this project, and have the Board of County Commissioners decide which alternative method we're going to use. Are we going to use design build, or are we going to use construction manager at risk? Again, design build has a 3-phase process. We went into quite a bit of detail in how that works. And again, you arrive at a final contract. That final contract with the guaranteed maximum price, with the schedule for completion, must be submitted and approved by the Board of County Commissioners to commence the project. If you want to find the specific requirements for design build, go to KSA 19216F, and you build the project. And it does seem to go smoother once you go through that process. It does seem to go smoother. And I've bored you quite a bit this morning with details. I guess the point is, review the purchasing policy, bring the county counselor's office into it early on, especially if you're not accustomed to going through this process, to make sure that we are going through each step. I've seen successful projects with each method that we've talked about this morning. I've seen unsuccessful, what I would call unsuccessful delays, litigation using the traditional method and design build. I have less experience with construction manager at risk. I haven't really seen one of those go south, but I'm absolutely positive that it could in different ways, the same ways that other projects have problems. And that's usually unexpected conditions, unexpected changes in scope that the contractor will claim is necessary, unexpected changes in the completion date. All of those things are going to cause the owner to say, wait a minute, we had a contract, and so why are you telling me now X, Y, Z? Any other questions? Any other issues that you want to discuss about that process?
No, I just think it's important, like you just mentioned, that people use you as a resource. And there are other people too within the county that
Sure.
deal with this a lot, and there's a lot of good information from different people, and rely on those people so we don't mess up. That's the key. We want to do it, follow all the statutes and do it correctly. And
The easiest way to avoid delays is to do the process correctly. Find out ahead of time how that process works, and we'll work with you to try to do it as quickly as possible. Okay?
all right, well,
Thank
you,
you.
Jim. All right. Next on the agenda is public comment. Do we have anyone that'd like to speak? I don't think we have anyone. And then we have administrative communications. Parks and Rec, Shirley?
Don't call me Shirley.
No, don't call me Shirley. All right. Well, seeing that, I guess we're adjourned. Thank you. Thank you for attending. Come on, Tim.
Bravo! Bravo!
The message is it's complicated.
It is.